Call this meeting to order. Would you follow along with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Marshall will give the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can do it from here, Mark. Okay, sure.
Bow your heads with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, the opportunity to gather together as like-minded individuals and citizens who care about their community. We thank you for the opportunity to live in a community where we can still celebrate Faith Family Flag, give invocations before our meetings, and give all glory to you. And we ask that you just give us wisdom to move forward and discernment to make the best decisions for our community. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Marshall. Madam Clerk, lead a roll call, please.
LeBlanc. Here. Rodriguez.
Here.
Howden.
Here.
Milton.
Yep.
Cooper.
Here.
Denham.
Here.
Fenton. Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We will start off with a presentation on our short-term rentals from Cherie.
Okay. Good evening, Board, Mr. Mayor, Miss Kathy. Thank you guys for all coming tonight. We're going to do a study session on short-term rentals. So here we go. All right, my name is Cherie Pfeiffer, and I'm the Finance Director for the City of Branson. I want to start by thanking you for joining us this evening. We greatly appreciate your time and any feedback you have for us. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on all things nightly rentals, but specifically on safety, fees, and the future of nightly rentals in Branson. I'd like to go ahead and start with a quick clarification on what a nightly rental is and what it is not. A nightly rental is a short-term rental or a vacation rental. A nightly rental is a furnished single or two-family residence that is used for accommodations of a short-term stay that is less than 30 days. Think Airbnb or VRBO. A nightly rental is not a hotel or a motel, but it can be a single condo in a multiple dwelling building. Okay. Branson has over 10 million visitors every year. Our mission is to keep all 10 million visitors safe. When we say our mission, we don't just mean finance, we mean everyone in this room. The City of Branson as a whole prides itself on being a safe place for families. Safety is the filter we used for all talking points and decisions in this presentation. So why are we up here tonight? What's the point? What's the meat and the potatoes, the significance, the bottom line? We're here because of a flaw in our current structure that, if left unchecked, could result in the loss of life. I do wish we were being dramatic, but unfortunately we're not. By addressing these points, licensing every address, increasing fees to cover the workload that we're proposing, and by creating changes in our municipal code, the risk to the lives of our citizens, guests, and first responders significantly diminishes. Also, we hope to level out the playing field for our short-term rental business owners. On this animated graph, you can get a glimpse into how easy it is to access nightly rentals for those traveling to the area. Airbnb has made price comparison and booking a place to stay easier than ever. The graph in the background shows the increase of nightly rental businesses in the last 10 years. As of right now, there is not a specific set of guidelines for nightly rentals in our city. Nightly rentals have been operating with the same specification and guidelines that any other business has. This was a fine practice back in 2013 when we only had 100 nightly rental businesses total. But as of last year, that number has increased to 548 nightly rental businesses, and we get new application for business license daily. With me tonight, I have Haley Mendoza, who is our nightly rental guru. She'll be helping me bring this presentation to life and add some insights that she's learned in the last several months as working as our nightly rental specialist for the City of Branson.
Hello, Haley.
Hello. Thank you, Cherie. As she said, my name is Haley, and I have been living and breathing nightly rentals. One of my first missions when taking over the nightly rental side of business licensing was to figure out how many nightly rentals do we have here in the City of Branson. I assumed this would be the easiest step. Pull a report and done. Not quite. Somewhere along the road with nightly rentals, the city had adopted a procedure that allowed nightly rental businesses to operate multiple rentals with a single license. Finance does keep track of what we call the main property and then all subsequent properties. The data is thorough and beautiful, but incomplete. The problem with this procedure is that it relies on the business owner to contact us in finance and let us know of any and all property changes. I'm not sure about you guys, but when I purchase something really exciting, my first thought isn't generally to call the business licensing department and tell them about it. Although we are delightful conversationalists, so they're missing out. One by one, I painstakingly called and emailed all of our short-term rental business owners to ask exactly how many properties they are operating and the addresses of those properties. During my correspondence, I found a bunch of surprise rentals, 654 surprise rentals to be exact. I'm calling them a surprise rental because we didn't know these rentals were operating in our city. On top of those 654 rentals that we weren't informed of, I also found 36 businesses that were operating with a business license, but that license didn't match any address that we had on file for them, which meant they weren't operating with a valid license. I also found 40 businesses that were no longer operating in Branson at all. This initial investigation did prove fruitful in that we found a slew of extra rentals, saw an increase in tourism tax of about $40,000 when compared to the same quarter in the previous year, and we cut the number of short-term rentals not paying tourism tax in half. All very good things, but the question I was looking to answer was how many rentals? And after months and months, I finally got my answer. 1,661 nightly rentals. If you go to our city website, you'll see we have a bunch of fun tools and facts. One of those is a geographical profile of our Branson visitors. 15% of visitors come from 100 miles or less away. 30% come from 101 to 300 miles away, and 55% come from outside of a 300-mile radius. So this shows that a vast majority of our visitors aren't here for a day trip. They are staying in the area while they enjoy the city. And luckily for our visitors, on top of all of our hotels and resorts, we have 1,661 nightly rentals for them to choose from. This screen recording is of the beautiful mapping system that IT Steven has created for us. This one is just a recording, but on our browser, it is fully interactive and allows us not only to track rentals in the area, but gives us a fully comprehensive visual to those rentals. All of the green circles represent rentals that are fully licensed. The yellow represents nightly rentals that are in review or still in that licensing phase. Red circles are unlicensed nightly rentals, and the blue ones represent nightly rentals that we suspect are unlicensed, but we're still investigating. And if you were wondering where we're hiding 1,600 nightly rentals, the majority of them are to the west and south of Green Mountain Drive, located in Ward 3. You can also see when we zoom in on this map how incredibly specific and detailed this mapping system is. It has been an absolute game changer for us. But before we get too much further, I want to quickly address how the business licensing process works. Our honeycomb chart here shows how our current structure operates. We don't want to get too much into the weeds, but in case you've never opened a business in Branson, the most important thing to know is that every application, which means every business in Branson, must get approved by every department within the city. The application starts in finance, where we accept and process the application. From there, we send it simultaneously to each other separate department for their approvals. All of the departments have very important approvals that are needed, but when it comes to overall safety, we rely heavily on the fire department's approval. The inspectors check the wiring, building, elevators, walkways, and anything else you can think of to make sure they're all safe. They also inspect fire alarms, fire extinguishers, sprinkler systems, and exits to ensure that if an emergency arises, the location is properly prepared. Our first proposed change is actually to that in-house process. Instead of our honeycomb chart, we are looking to switch to a less independent approval process. Each application will still get approved by all the departments, but the timing will change. So the process will still start in the finance department, where we will receive all applications. But instead of sending them to all the departments at once, the application will only be sent to the zoning department. The zoning department has a very crucial job when it comes to nightly rentals. Their job is to protect our neighborhoods. In our research, we found an article written by Sarah Carnes in 2017. This article was about nightly rentals in Taney County, not in the Branson city limits, but we did want to go ahead and share a quote from that article. Smith said, and I quote, "Living next to nightly rentals means not knowing your neighbors." We don't want to stop nightly rentals from coming to Branson, but we do want to take extra precautions for our residents. One way we can ensure that our residents and neighborhoods are being protected is by adding a short-term rental permit. This permit will give planning and zoning an opportunity to more stringently track nightly rentals in neighborhoods. It will give them resources and data points to use in the future if zoning maps are needed. Or changes to the zoning maps, I apologize. After the zoning department approves the application and the short-term rental permit is given back to finance, then the fire department will come into play. In our current system, the fire department and the zoning department work on their approvals simultaneously, but independently. The problem with this method is that if one of the two departments rejects the application for whatever reason, the other department has already put in time and resources that are now wasted. This will stagger our resources and allow for a more streamlined process. At this point, the fire department will then begin the inspection process of every short-term rental. We'll get into how big of an undertaking that is here in the next couple of slides, but for now, know that by inspecting all of the nightly rentals, we will increase tourist safety, first responder safety, and infrastructure safety. Then, once we have our approvals from the fire and the zoning department, at that point, the application would go to the rest of the different departments for their final approvals.
Haley? Yes. It may be hard to understand right now, but with a little bit of practice, you'll get more comfortable up here.
I'm sorry. I know I talk really fast.
You did great. Great.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say she was doing really good until she threw Ward 3 under the bus. But what I'd like to say is we are making a hefty contribution to the city's financial welfare with these nightly rentals. So.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. When we started this project, we knew our end goal, to increase the safety of our nightly rental businesses. What we did not know was what steps we should be taking to reach that goal. Instead of reinventing the wheel, we opted to pick out around 20 cities to research. These cities were picked because they have one or more of the following. They are tourist destinations, they have similar tourist patterns, they have a strong connection to family, they have that small town feel, a focus on nature and outdoor activities, or they're based on their proximity to Branson. We researched many, many, many more cities than what we have listed, with a strong emphasis on the municipal code books of those cities who have a large number of nightly rental businesses. We wanted to see how their license structures have been built. Do they have specific sections of code for nightly rentals? What are their fees for nightly rentals? What do those fees include? And how do they handle inspections? How long are their business license good for? And what are the zoning requirements, and et cetera? We discovered what we expected. They're all different. There isn't a standard, and every city has a different way of doing things within their own city. There was one thing we noticed that was similar across the board. Branson is the only one that doesn't require individual license for each short-term rental unit. Let me say that again. Branson is the only one that doesn't require an individual license for each short-term rental unit. Does that mean that there isn't another city in all the United States that operates this way? No. We're saying that all the cities that we looked at, Branson was the only city that we found that allowed what we call an umbrella license. An umbrella license isn't a technical term. It's a term that we created to help explain short-term rental licensing and how it works within the city. The umbrella license is how this chart of 22 nightly rental businesses owns and operates 291 separate nightly rental units. If we look at business A, we see that they are one nightly rental business and own or operate one nightly rental unit. Now let's look at business T. This is also just one nightly rental business, but they own or operate 4 separate nightly rental businesses under their one license. Now, how about business F? They are one nightly rental business, but they own or operate 167 nightly rental businesses within the city of Branson under that one license. We opted not to include their names, but these are real examples of businesses within the city.
We have 548 nightly rental businesses. The pie chart is the breakdown of private owners versus property managers. So a private owner would be someone who owns one or more properties and runs them themselves. It could also be someone who owns and runs their own property, and then maybe they maintain a property for like a friend or a family member. A property manager, however, is someone who operates properties for a fee. Property owners pay the property managers to have a business license, to take care of taxes on their behalf, and for advertising their rentals. 94% of the nightly rental businesses are run by private owners. That leaves 33 out of the 548 businesses, or just 6%, that are property managers. So if we take that over to our pie chart on the right, goodness gracious, we've broken down our 1,661 nightly rental addresses. In terms of units or unique addresses, private owners and property managers are almost exactly split down the middle. This means that 6% of the businesses own or operate almost half of the nightly rental properties. This discrepancy is due to that umbrella license, or that one license is able to cover multiple properties. This slide, this is why we're here. All 3 bars on either side of the graph should be even. The amount of businesses should equal the amount of properties, should equal the amount of inspections. But the disparity between how many properties the property manager side owns and operates compared to the number of inspections is alarming. To put it into some perspective, let's say a new property manager comes in and applies for a business license. They go through all the steps, including a property inspection, and they get their license. After some time, business picks up, and this property manager acquires 49 more additional properties to manage. This is now a property manager with 50 properties, 49 additional addresses under that one license, which means that those other 49 units have the potential to have never been inspected. In this scenario, this bar goes up, this bar does not. Again, we don't know why or even when this procedure became adopted. We are here today because it was noticed, it was flagged, and we're not going to sit idle and wait for an emergency to occur.
As we previously mentioned, an umbrella license isn't a technical term, and it's not how our code is written. Our code states very clearly that a separate license is required for each address at which a business entity operates. This particular ordinance dates back to 1987, long before 2008 when Airbnb went live, and well before 2018 when the nightly rental boom occurred in Branson. So why wasn't Section 22-30 of our municipal code upheld? We don't know. Our best guess is that the property managers are such a new phenomenon that when they shifted into such a heavily integrated part of the nightly rental community, they were treated as every other nightly rental. The problem with the umbrella license is that only the main property or the address on the license ever has to be inspected. Let's look at one neighborhood, 2700 Green Mountain Drive. In this area, we have 45 known rentals out of 80 units. Of those 80 units, only 39 of them have been inspected. In this small area, 25% of the inspected units originally failed their inspection. They did eventually get everything squared away, but during their initial failed inspections, 9 out of 10 of them failed from improper safety equipment. According to a survey conducted by the National Fire Protection Association, when asked how often they should replace smoke alarms, 90% of those surveyed did not select the correct answer, which is once every 10 years. The average business owner cannot be expected to remember the ins and outs of every facet of running a safe and profitable business. That's why our fire safety inspections are so important. During an inspection, you get an expert at your property to listen, observe, and give guidance. They will identify fire hazards, inspect fire equipment, ensure compliance with fire codes, regulations, and standards, all of which in turn help keeps everyone safe.
On September 9th, 2022 at 2:30 in the morning, this building at 2700 Green Mountain Drive caught on fire. It was determined to be an unintentional fire, possibly due to the combustible wood getting too hot during construction earlier that day, but they couldn't know for sure. Dispatch was notified of the fire from an officer who was out making his rounds when he smelled smoke and investigated the area. While the officer was there, he was able to knock on the door, wake up a female inside, and get her to safety. Another female was trapped inside her apartment by the flames that engulfed the stairwell. Fire crews were able to gain entry and rescue the other woman as well. One firefighter had to be taken to the hospital for possible heat exhaustion after the incident. We got lucky with this one. The officer was in the right place at the right time to get help on the way. The early morning hours are a vulnerable time. The safety equipment is there to wake us up, to alert us to danger, and to get us moving toward safety. Had those 25% that originally failed their inspections never reached out to get inspected, it's likely that their equipment wouldn't have alerted them to this emergency. City of Branson officers and our firefighters will go into danger to save others. They are brave men and women who took an oath to this community. They are out there making sure that we stay safe every day. Our part is to mitigate as much risk as we can by requiring standards of safety and upholding our community to those standards. So at this point in our investigation, we found our what, we found our why, but now for the how. How will we be able to ask fire marshals to significantly increase their workload? How will we be able to get all of these properties inspected with our already limited resources?
This brought us back to our list of cities again, this time with the lens on how are they able to license and inspect every nightly rental that comes to them. The answer is pretty simple: funding. Branson currently has a sliding scale with their business license fee based on the number of employees with a $50 minimum. Currently, 95% of our short-term rental businesses only pay the $50 minimum. Unlike some other cities, Branson also doesn't include any additional costs for the initial inspection of a business. The $50 application fee at Branson is to cover the processing of the application, the paperwork and resources used for the application, the inspection scheduling, the initial inspection by the fire department and building department, and the time that other departments like police and public works use on their approvals, and the time to process tourism tax payments on a monthly basis. We noticed a pretty significant disparity between our numbers and the numbers of other cities. While our annual household income is very similar, the amount that we're asking when it comes to our business license is a fraction of what the other cities are asking. And as you can see, these are the cities that Branson often gets compared to, and yet we are not coming close to their fee scales. The amount of work required for each business license application versus the $50 application fee we receive to process those applications doesn't seem like it's enough money to cover the workload. Now, we don't work off of feelings, so we broke down the numbers. A serious deep dive into how many hours business license applications take to process from start to finish, how long inspections typically take, not including drive time, and the time it takes departments to process approvals. We took our payroll hours and time budgeted to figure out how much we made in 2023 for business license applications and dues, and found that the city of Branson lost $170,000 to licensed businesses in 2023. What this means is that our business license fee is not covering the city's cost to issue these licenses. We are running a deficit, and the work is still continuing and happening. When we switch to licensing every single rental, we still would not be able to cover the labor cost, let alone the amount of inspections we're proposing to add to the budgeted labor.
On the right is a scanned-in copy of a business license application for a business from 1994. This business is still operating and beloved in our city. And I'm sure you've noticed the big old banner across the top. Our business license fee scale has not changed in 37 years. Want to know what fees have changed in almost 40 years? everything else. Grocery prices, gas prices, minimum wage, the value of a dollar. For instance, the dollar only buys today 36.63% of what it could buy in 1987. So a $50 application fee in 1987 is the equivalent of $132 today. We need to make some changes. Our proposed fee for nightly rentals is $100 per unique address. We are also looking to add a short-term rental permit of $150. This permit would also be for each address. The total a business owner would pay is $250 annually. This increase would meet the dollar where it is and allow for the cost of licensing to more fully reflect the amount of work and people that are involved in each step of the process. So if and when we make the change and our application fees go up to $100, our short-term rental permit comes into existence, it's $150, and we require every single license or every single address to be a separate license, what will the impact be on our business owners? Not hypothetically, the actual impact. So let's go back to our businesses from earlier. And just a reminder, these three are still in operation today. We're gonna take a look at how many rentals they have, what their total gross receipts from 2023 is, amount they paid for a business license in 2023, amount they paid per rental, and how much they will owe with the forecasted $250 amount. We also included what percentage that amount is of their total gross receipts. So Business A. Business A owns one nightly rental. Last year, they grossed about $30,000. They paid $50 for their license, which means they paid $50 per rental. With the $250 license and permit fee, they will owe $250, which is 0.8% of their total gross receipts from last year. Business T. Business T owns 4 nightly rentals. Their gross receipts was around $105,000. Last year, they paid $50 for their application fee, and that broken down is about $12.50 per rental. With the increased rate, they'll pay $1,000, or 0.9% of their gross receipts. Business F. Business F's numbers jump up quite a bit. Business F has the most nightly rentals of any one single property manager. So this is the cap, and we picked them for that reason. We wanted to show our minimum and our current maximum. So Business F owns and operates 167 nightly rentals. Last year, they grossed around $7 million. In 2023, they paid $50 for their license, which equals 30 cents per rental. With the $250 for the application fee and permit fee, the amount they'll owe at the application and renewal will be $41,750, or only 0.6% of their gross receipts from last year.
This is the total breakdown of our nightly rental businesses. We have 548 total. 394 of those business owners only have one nightly rental. 77 business owners have 2 properties, and 30 business owners have 3 properties, which means 91%, or 501 out of our 548, have a maximum of 3 rentals. At our proposed fee of $250, a rental application and permit fee, that's a maximum of $750 for 91% of our short-term rental owners. The rightmost part of the chart is the property managers. There is not a single private owner who owns more than 9 rentals. The property managers own a right, charge a fee to run all the ins and outs of a nightly rental business. Since it is a service, we suspect that they have policies in place to mitigate change in markets and price increases. The middle section is a mix. Some of them are private owners and some of them are property managers. Our focus is on the private owners, or the 91% of the nightly rental business owners. This group is our small businesses. We wanted to make certain that with any changes, those who are operating a smaller scale business will still be able to thrive. With our changes to the fee structure, we would be looking at a potential revenue of just about $169,000. This revenue could be used for additional staff needed in finance, fire, or for code to manage the new workload for the city. These changes would fund our efforts to put the stamp of safety on nightly rentals for us to know that we did what we could to prevent accidents.
On the following slides, we're going to quickly go over some adjustments to code that we believe will add clarity, context, and tools for us to use going forward. We're going to break our amendments or proposed changes into 4 pieces: the item itself, what the code currently says about said item, the changes we want to make, and the impact that we believe our changes will have. Our first week is to the code book itself. As it stands, there's no specific section for short-term rentals. Our change is pretty simple: add one. With the growing amount of short-term rental business owners, a section under the business license header that relates just to short-term rentals will add some clarity and confidence to our business owners. Our next proposed change is to a records section. There is a section of code that does briefly touch on records and audits for businesses, but there isn't a section specifically about how audits work with short-term rentals. Our change, again, pretty simple: add one. We want a section specifically for what that short-term rental business owner will need to be keeping track of in the event that they're audited: bookings, sites, guest numbers, profit, cleaning fees, that kind of thing. And then future application fees. As it stands, there is no section of code that addresses how fees may be adjusted in the future and when to be adjusted in the future. We don't want to wait another 37 years before we address fees. Our change is to create a section that addresses inflation and economy shifts. Annually, the finance director will look at the consumer price index to determine whether or not the fees are still appropriate and will adjust if necessary. And lastly, application fees. This one we've touched pretty heavily on thus far. We have a section in code that directly states what our fees are for business licenses, and we'll just need to update this section with any changes that take place.
This entire project has been safety-centered. We've been partnering a lot with the fire team to address concerns and create a plan of change that promotes safety in a realistic way. Nightly rentals are foremost a commercial property. Commercial properties, especially ones that will have people sleeping in them, require a certain level of safety equipment. This includes a fire sprinkler system, a fire alarm system, a key box for fire department access. In order to turn a home into a commercial business, there is a varied cost associated with getting the necessary equipment in place. The fire department has given us 2 options to consider. The first is to keep the fire code as it is currently, which requires commercial structures to have sprinkler systems, even if that means retrofitting a pre-existing building. We understand that this is a very expensive option and may not be practical for all scenarios. So another option we have before us to consider would allow for a single pre-existing building based on a square footage addendum. For example, a 1,500 square foot pre-existing single-family, 1-story home that would hold up to 8 occupants would qualify for this addendum. They would be required to have additional alarm systems, fire extinguishers, and a key box for fire department access, but not required to retrofit the building for a sprinkler system. Now, this would require a change to our current fire code, reducing the ICC codes by amended ordinance. Some other pieces of fire code we are looking at adjusting: increasing the fire reinspection window from annually to once every 3 years. This will help reduce the workload on the fire department, since the number of units to be inspected will increase greatly with our proposed changes. Also, this will support what we are most interested in, which is gaining compliance, making sure all properties are inspected and safe without causing financial difficulties on the business owners. We are also looking at allowing inspection paperwork to be transferred with the property ownership. We see a lot of short-term rentals change hands between the various owners. Since all units are being inspected, they would receive a certificate of inspection for a 3-year period for each specific address. Then, for example, if after 1 year an owner wants to sell the property, that fire inspection on said property would transfer to the new owner and still be good for the remainder of the 3 years. We are not looking to implement change immediately and bring the hammer down on those who do not instantly comply. In order for us to get all of the nightly rentals inspected, it will take some time. We have partnered with the fire department and have agreed that a full license year is a reasonable time frame for business owners to become compliant. This would have us rolling out our fee change this time next year with the renewal season, but nobody would be penalized for lack of inspection until 2026, a full year later. So, why are we here tonight? We're here tonight to address 3 opportunities for improvement for our short-term nightly rental businesses. These changes will help protect the health, safety, and interests of owners, neighbors, and visitors within the city of Branson. Number 1, we want to license each short-term rental. By doing this, we will be able to verify that each property is properly licensed through the city, inspected, and charge the appropriate fees and taxes. Number 2, we want to increase the application fee and create a short-term rental permit. The fee increase will cover the city of Branson's costs associated with licensing and inspecting each short-term rental. This will also allow us to have control over zoning of short-term rentals. And number 3, we want to add a short-term rental section to our municipal code. This new section will address future application fees, auditing business records, code enforcement, and potential fire code changes. The short-term rental industry has seen an unprecedented surge in growth. These changes will allow us to grow and adapt with the industry. These changes will also create an equal playing field for all businesses. Everyone will have the same chance to be successful. This will also allow us to provide the maximum level of safety for our visitors. We appreciate your time, and thank you for attendance, and we're here if you have any questions.
Wow. That was a very entertaining, knowledgeable, well-thought-through proposal. Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience have any questions or comments of what you just heard? Yes. Come on up. Come on up. Excuse me. Go ahead and come up to the... We have people listening online, and so they can hear you.
I would ask, how does this address the hotels that are in this community that are also advertising their hotel rooms on platforms like Airbnb and Vrbo that are not considered a nightly rental but are advertising as such and getting the same business and are as competitive with us as I own Branson Nights.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
My name is Don Wazaleski.
Okay, Don.
I have 6 condos that we own and operate. We built the website. I handle all the social media. I do it all.
Okay, thank you.
And so to add a competitive advantage, we're losing business because certain hotels are doing this that are way more than 167 units. How are you planning to address that?
Well, they're already licensed.
Okay, well, Dawn, currently we've not have a plan in place to address that. This is just the short-term rentals specific. This is not hotels or motels or, yeah, and I understand that they're competing against you, but.
They're operating as nightly rentals.
Oh, they're operating. Yeah, I don't have any.
We can take you, John, we'll take your, absolutely take your comments
Yeah.
into consideration. At this point, this is just the study session to start the dialogue and to get direction from the board on if they want us to pursue that. But, you know, we will absolutely make sure that you get to have a part in those conversations because I know you've got a lot of experience that could help us.
Yes, and I've spoke with Dawn previously too. We've had meetings, so.
So,
And Don's been here a few times, and I'm not sure I understand I know you want to move on, but, well, I mean, that's what I gathered, but my question is, what does he mean by that?
you know, Don, if you would, probably the same question. If there's a hotel room, right, it is a nightly rental. Would you explain that difference?
Sure.
Yes,
So if
thank
you
you.
stay at one of my condos, you're going to get a full kitchen, stainless steel appliances, a king-size $3,000 purple mattress. You're going to get a living room, possibly double bedrooms, depending on the size of your group. With a hotel, you'll get a mini fridge. You won't even get a hot plate. It's a bed and a shower and a place to sleep. So the expectation is it's a lot cheaper. Now, if you go into Airbnb and you look for, the cheapest place to stay on Airbnb, the idea is you're getting either a room in somebody's house or you're getting a condo, which is the more common application. Now, these hotels are recognizing, and there's a way to do this when you list your properties on their website, that I have one room with a king-size bed. I have 80 of them or 300 of them, and Airbnb will continue to list that while your inventory drops. And so on spring break, where the town sold out, they can list that $80 a night hotel room with one king bed comparing my condo with one king bed, and now they're looking at $150 a night with me as opposed to $80 a night. But it's listed and advertised and marketed as a short-term rental. Now, if I wanted to just book right through this particular hotel, then I can do that, use points and whatever.
Yeah.
But they can be filled through Airbnb's platform, and that's how it competes with our business. And so all I'm asking is to consider taking that into, as a factor, because 167 doesn't even come close. I mean, we're all pretty probably familiar with who that business is. I'm one of the ones that owns 6, so I'm kind of in that middle.
Yep.
And I'm looking at from $50 to $1,500. Well, I don't mind paying 0.8% of my income on average, but I'm also looking at increased POA, COA, and green fees at the point on an annual basis. I sat on the COA board there for a while. I know the budgets will continue to go up. I'm looking at a market that's highly saturated, and these hotels marketing themselves as Airbnbs
Yeah, okay.
contributes to that.
Thank you very much for explaining that.
Okay.
I mean,
I didn't know
and what do you do about that? I mean, it's just, they're kind of misleading the customer, and I don't know how you know. I mean, I get it. I totally get it.
Don, like Kathy said, we'd like you included in our discussions.
Yeah,
Thank
that is something that I've noticed while I'm researching them, that I do have to filter through pretty heavily to get through all of the hotels and motels. So I don't know if like how timeshares have to, they are individually licensed as nightly rentals. So it's for discussion, yeah.
I would add one more thing to the conversation. When I saw the 500 some odd nightly rentals or properties, is that what it was?
The 548 businesses.
Businesses. Okay, and maybe almost 2,000 nightly rentals, right? Okay, I promise you, there's way more than 2,000 nightly rentals in this town. At the point alone, we have over 400. We don't have 25% of the entire population nightly rentals just at the point. And so the enforcement of that is going to be where you're gonna generate more than double your revenue if that's what you end up doing.
Don, are you suggesting there's businesses that do short-term rentals that haven't called the city and asked for a license?
Know that there are some unethical people out there.
Thank
So
you.
the enforcement will also generate revenue as well.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the audience have any questions or comments?
My name is Steve Shear. I'm not a short-term rental owner. I've got a hotel in town, the Hotel Grand Victorian, and we're 151 units. I just want to thank you for your efforts. This has been very comprehensive in terms of what you've done. I'm on the hotel board too, and my observation would be in terms of the inspections, things like the fire inspection, I would suggest, just my personal opinion, that you stick with 1 year rather than 3 years. A lot can happen in a year's period, let alone 3 years period. And my observation, I'm in a group that has about 30 hotels all over the country. And when you do, and because of my age, I've been in the business for 50 plus years. And as part of my career, I've run 25, 30 hotels, and a lot of them have been extended stay properties. But they've been brands like Hilton or Hyatt, IHG, things like that. And they all have very stringent requirements in terms of furnishings. And I know the codes in the city cover a lot of this stuff, but I think it would be worthwhile to look at that relative to the short-term rentals, to see that the codes are being met. Even things like drapes, are they fireproof? I know that with a lot of the weekly rentals, people live in them. Are the electrical requirements for things like people using toaster ovens, hot plates, things like that? Those are all concerns and can lead to hazard issues and things like that. So those are my observations.
Steve, thank you so much
Yeah,
for sharing.
thank you. Appreciate it. You did an outstanding job.
Anybody else in the audience have any questions or comments? About the board, what are your thoughts? Marshall?
Well, first off, I want to thank administration for having a study session like this. It's been something that's been bandied about for a long time. What are we going to do about them? How are we going to keep up to date on these? That kind of thing. You know, I do find it interesting that we're constantly talking about the need for housing and the need for workforce housing, and yet we are just seeing these run rampant throughout our community. Now, not to be a hypocrite, as we have 1,661 nightly rentals, when my wife and I finish renovating the new condo that we just purchased, you'll have at least 1,662, right? But it seems to me that it's best that it's kind of best that those do occur in the places that are the kind of apartment type structure or condo type structure. Not that you can't rent out a home, but I guess I just say all that to say that I think this was thorough. I think it really addressed a lot of the nuances on that. And the fact that we are at least making the freestanding homes comply with what else you would have to do if you had a family of 8 stay in a place in a commercial business. I just think it's all tremendous. I think you guys have done a great job, and it really will go, I think, to address some of the issues that we have, just kind of the oversaturation of the market, but it seems to be through kind of an inorganic way because they're kind of skipping a lot of the processes that they would have had to go through in any other city. So great job. Think it was thorough, and I look forward to seeing all the fruit that comes from this. So.
The presentation was outstanding, and I could tell y'all did a lot of hard work and investigation on it. And I think we all knew that this has been an issue. I mean, you could have stopped 5 minutes into it, and I'd be like, yeah, let's go, let's do, you know what I mean? But I appreciate all the extra stuff. It was great. I did have one question I would just like to maybe hear again, and that's the fire code change, and maybe Chief Martin could touch, or maybe you could. I just wanted to hear what I heard it, but I want to make sure I heard it, what exactly that is.
All right, so we're trying to address the feedback that we've heard from our businesses. And we hear a lot of them say that it's too expensive for them to retrofit a pre-existing building. They estimate that to be about $30,000. And so what we have is some businesses that pay their tourism tax, but they're not licensed through the city. And they're not getting those inspections and stuff because they don't want to do the $30,000 fire retrofitting. So we're trying to put an option in there. I mean, whatever way you choose, we're good with, but either we keep the code as is, or we could consider lowering the code to allow like addendum for those special circumstances. Like if it's a smaller home where it's one level, it's not like it's part of a big condo, we would put more, they would have to have more fire system. Ted, come speak.
Yeah, we should.
I got this from Ted.
Sheree, Mary, if I can just interject one second.
bet.
This isn't something that we just made up on our own either. This was something at looking at lots of different comparable cities and understanding that some of the things that do force some of these operators underground, if you will, is the lack of wanting to invest the money to retrofit an existing home or structure.
Yeah, and
Yeah, for sure.
I get that. I guess I'm kind of asking because of my phone call to you last week for my situation. Would that change my situation with my insurance company? That
Sure, I think you bring up a good example, and that bases on a fact that you had an unsprinkled portion of your building, so your underwriter had a concern. So that could happen.
It wasn't a concern. They said we're dropping you.
Yeah, I was trying to be. So
After 18 years, go ahead.
to give an example, I used to own a home in Ward 3, and I chose to sprinkle that home and put a fire alarm system in it. It'd be a perfect VRBO, one-story, great location right behind your theater. That's why it's great. But it's not zoned properly, so it cannot be used as a VRBO. So when we're in the districts that we're taking residential homes and switching into a VRBO setting, they're making a business. So we've built lots of properties, go look on 265 Highway, there are giant homes that installed the fire and life safety. So if it's fair, it's an option. But we just wanted to give something back that says if you'd like to take an existing property that's X amount of years old and go to a square footage and occupant load, we wanted to be able to toss that out to you. It would be reducing the minimum of a fire code, but it's worthy of talking about. Inspections are relevant because you could change your occupant load quickly in a residential home. You can go from a king-size bed that Don reached, that he visited about, but the next bedroom might have 2 sets of bunk beds in it. Now you start increasing the occupant load. That's why we want to talk about that as well. So we just wanted to put on the floor that there are options that we could talk about. And back to the vendors, we know those prices, we're hearing it, that they're coming back high, but a lot of it is because it's one thing to go out on a VRBO on 265 highway and install the sprinkler pipe while the walls are open compared to having to rip out sheetrock, install the pipe, put it back in, but still your business. You know what that business model is. So we do know retrofitting, like when I did my house, costs a little bit more.
Ted, I appreciate the fact that,
Okay.
you're open to other suggestions, because I've heard that often. That is why some of the properties that are nightly rentals aren't coming up and saying, I'd like a license, and it's because of that, the cost of the sprinkler
Correct.
system.
And the fireman in me is playing this double-edged
Sure.
seesaw here a little bit, and having traveled to some of these places that she compared to, I've stayed in some VRBOs that did not have fire protection in it. It's like, oh, you just wonder you're not following the exact International Fire Code as it is. So that's where this conversation come up about what are some options that our city might explore. But again, I want to make sure that we're clear that it is a business changing a use group from a residential home to an R1 commercial application. You're doing a business. You're there. You're designed to make money. I chose to sprinkle my house because it was a safety feature. So I paid that money for that purpose, not because it was a business. So that's where I wanted to play that line.
So the situation that I'm in right now, it doesn't even comply, it doesn't even fall into this whole category, because it's already a business and it was in a,
Be back to the underwriters. If they come in and do an inspection and they say, hey, wait a minute, you're an operating business, it's up to them if they choose to underwrite or not. My neighbor just got nailed in Walnut Shade, Missouri, because he had some bad steps outside. He had trees too close to a building. So they look for those things that causes risk and claims. And that could be a factor with that.
well, yeah, and I get that, but I mean, for me or somebody else that has a theater in town that came up with, the code change wouldn't affect the rules of the way that is.
I just heard what you said, sorry.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so if we reduce the code, that would be a great consideration to take back to the insurance vendors and ask them that question.
That's what yeah, okay. Okay.
Ruth?
First of all, Cherie and Haley, thank you so much for the thorough presentation. A couple of things to just keep in mind is, number one is our life safety responsibilities. And the other is to remember that the international code is minimal code requirements. And so that's why we see such a huge concern when people are continually trying to change the use. I have a question regarding that map. Was wonderful. I really like the map, although I'm Ward 3. But will this be a map that will be on our website as well whenever you get this going, just like all the other maps that are?
I don't know, because my future
Into the,
The future plan of the map is once everybody's licensed individually, I will be able to tie their taxes that they pay for, to their map, and then it will be a way for us to audit them. So I can look over the map and compare like properties and see which ones we need to audit the records. So I don't know if I would want that level of detail on the city website.
Okay, yeah, I was just asking because
We could probably do so they can do different layers. So we could keep that layer in-house and probably just do the other layer out there. We could probably do that.
because I think it's important for all our citizens to be able to know what's going on in their neighborhoods, and just being able to, I think somebody's running a nightly rental. No, they're not.
Right.
It's not
yeah,
here.
I would think Chad would be able to separate those
I think so, too.
permissions out.
Yeah, and we do get a lot of calls of people telling on their neighbors. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I would say that by the amount of properties that aren't getting inspected, that's fallen under the radar, that we've probably been pretty fortunate that there hasn't been more issues.
Yeah.
Would you say, Chief? I mean, wow. That's
Yeah.
mind-blowing.
So there again is a balance of not bring the hammer down versus the longer we wait, the more potential risk there is, right? Jeff?
I can share one quick example. What we've seen in the short-term rentals as a trend is the increase in occupant load per square footage. And you have one residential stove that just has a standard residential hood over it. So for example, my hood at home vents to the outside. So I can, if I cooked heavy or got a little crazy with my cooking, I can get that smoke out. But we have a lot of VRBOs that do not have that. So when you have a standard home, it might have a standard 4 or 5 people in the house, mom, dad, couple kids. Now we're switching to an occupant load of let's put the bunk beds in, let's use a closet, let's use every space we can get an extra bed in. Now we're going to cook for 10, 12, 14, 16 people. It has been a game changer in cooking fires in our community.
Wow, thank you, Dad. That's why it's in his wheelhouse. I wouldn't have thought about
You know,
stoves and toasters.
You know what else I like about this is that it evens the playing field for the people that do it correctly and right,
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? Somebody else is not getting an advantage by not paying these fees when others may be paying the fees. And I mean, if I was Don, I would be like, I would be like, okay, I'm game, as long as we're all doing the same thing. You know what I mean?
Don, do you have something you want to add?
I would like to first say that your presentation's great. The last time I talked to her, she was just in the beginning phases of this, and you've come a long way. So, great job. I do also want to set a realistic expectation. You're right. I do support this. However, one of the things I wanted to touch on was the records. I was going back through the notes that I was taking while I was sitting down, and you had made a comment about changing the records to where you're recording cleaning fees and number of guests and whatnot. That's going to be virtually impossible. Now, I may advertise a maximum of 6 people or 10 people or 14 people in a particular condo. I may get 8. They may tell me 4 showing up, and all 14 show up. I may say the maximum occupancy is 10, 15 show up. Now, I live on T Highway. I'm 30 minutes away from the point. I'm not down there monitoring at 8 o'clock at night
Yeah.
who's coming and going. Cleaning fees, sometimes I comp those for guests when I've got a repeat guest that stays with me 3 or 4 times out of the year. There's certain things you're just not going to be able to track effectively or efficiently and reliably. So I just want you to keep that practicality in mind as well.
Good point, Don.
Thank you.
Any other aldermen? Go ahead, Marshall.
Haley, so, and I see that it's been a huge project to go through and call all these people and to do, but I guess one of the easiest ways that we figure out if people are operating without a business license is just to maybe yearly scout Airbnb and VRBO. I mean, do you plan on doing that?
I do that every day. I'm on it so much that I know when new ones are popping up, and I'm like, who are you? So, yeah. Yeah, it's all the time.
I was just going to say, from her presentation, I didn't expect anything less than that comment right there.
I prefer Dog the Bounty Hunter of nightly rentals, but
It's whatever you
Sheree,
want. Call yourself whatever.
Sheree, I think we put a round peg in a round hole.
So she's perfect, right?
That's, yeah.
So Mayor, if I could ask, just, it's sounding like we've got kind of a general consensus that we can keep going down this path.
bet.
And we can start getting the appropriate ordinances drafted in order to pursue this route. And ladies, you exceeded my expectation. We did a dry run together, and they put so much into this work and presentation. Outstanding job, just like I knew you would do. And I loved how you finally kind of settled in a little bit in, right? You hit your groove and you hit your stride, so well done. And to the board and to the mayor, we'll get to work on it promptly. So thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you. I had a few questions. Sheree, when you started off, you started talking about 1 and 2 bedroom.
Yes.
Nightly rentals, there could be 12 bedrooms, right? This also, which was interesting, is this also addresses the quality of life for our residents, right? The issues that neighbors feel when there's a nightly rental going in next door. And I think that's extremely important, right? I think that's it. I will be, I'm really looking forward to your continued marching down this road. And Kathy, I guess that's the plan. They're going to keep marching and we'll keep talking. Yeah.
Hey, Larry?
We could just start charging them by the flush if we really want to make some money. Every flush.
Where's Kendall?
What do you think, Kendall?
You for that?
Oh, okay, never mind.
I got a quick question here.
Yeah.
If we lower the standards on individual houses, I mean, Branson's already hurting the housing market. If we lower that standard, we're going to lose a lot of housing. I mean, I have friends on both sides that want to convert,
Good point.
and we have people looking for houses. If you lower the standard, and all of a sudden there's another 2,000 houses out off the market,
That's a good point.
I think that'd be horrible.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. That's a good point.
That's
Good point,
part of
Chuck.
the reason for the short-term rental permit that we were talking about. We're hoping that partnering with the planning and zoning, we could.
Well, because I needed some clarification on that. I actually talked to Alex about this earlier this week because my boss, we run a resort essentially, and he was asking me because he lives near the Cottonwood development over there behind Branson Meadows. And we had this come through with like Tyler Street because they disallowed Airbnbs a few years back. And I was just confused about which areas can and which can't. So this is my understanding, and somebody could clarify if I'm wrong, but essentially they're allowed in, or they're not allowed in low-density residential. They're allowed everywhere else unless it's a PD, because Tyler Street was a PD and the Cottonwoods is a PD. So like it does bring up the interesting thing because a few of the neighbors that are down by the new campground expansion, they've come up a few times. They want to do Airbnb in their neighborhood. It seems like the way they'd have to do that is have a PD overlay onto their neighborhood. It seems like that'd be the only way, unless we did like spot zoning or, yeah, so anyway, just, yeah.
How impressive. Yeah, he didn't say spots. I didn't. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're clearly marching down the right path. Are there any reports? No reports, then I would take a motion to adjourn. I have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion's